What if I told you that the most powerful people in history weren't the richest, the loudest, or even the smartest, but the ones who mastered a darker art, seduction, confidence, and psychological power? These aren't surface-level traits. They're tools of influence forged in silence and sharpened by restraint. You've been taught to seek approval, to be liked, to be kind, but kindness without power is often just an invitation to be overlooked. Look around. People don't follow who's nicest. They follow who's unforgettable. Niccolo Machiavelli, often misunderstood as a manipulator, didn't simply write about politics. He decoded the mechanics of control. To him, seduction wasn't just about attraction, it was about attention. Confidence wasn't a feeling, it was a performance. And power wasn't brute force. It was emotional leverage, invisibility, and timing. This is not a guide for everyone. It's a transformation for those who are tired of being ignored, of being predictable, of being replaceable. If you've ever walked into a room and felt invisible, this is your blueprint to become the gravitational force people orbit around. Because true power isn't loud. It doesn't beg, it doesn't explain, it simply is. And the moment you stop chasing people, start chasing you. Welcome to the Machiavellian blueprint. Let's begin. History doesn't remember the well-behaved. It remembers the unforgettable, the ones who didn't just succeed, but seduced the world into watching. At the center of every lasting influence is a silent triad, often hidden in plain sight: seduction, confidence, and power. These are not separate skills. They are interwoven threads in the fabric of human dominance. Master one and the others follow. But master all three, and you don't just rise, you become untouchable. Most people misunderstand these words. They think seduction is about sex, confidence is about motivation, and power is about control. Machiavelli knew better. He saw the architecture beneath the surface, the cold, strategic roots of influence. To him, seduction wasn't about beauty. It was about being unforgettable in any room. Confidence wasn't about feeling good. It was armor performed before it was real. And power. It was perception, what others feel when they stand in your presence, and more importantly, what they fear losing if you disappear. Seduction at its core is about tension. Not chaos, but curiosity. The question left hanging in the air after you speak. The eye contact you break just before it becomes predictable. The silence that lingers longer than expected. It's not about being available, it's about being desired. People want what they can't fully grasp. That's the secret. Confidence is equally misunderstood. You've been told to believe in yourself. But belief is fragile, belief cracks. Machiavelli's insight was brutal, but true confidence is a strategy, not a feeling. You act powerful until others respond to you as if you are, and only then the mask becomes real. The way you walk, the pauses between your words, the way you occupy space without apology, these are not minor behaviors. They are silent declarations of control. And power is never taken. It is given willingly by those who feel something around you they can't explain. It's not about being feared like a tyrant or loved like a hero. It's about being respected deeply, instinctively, without demand. People follow those who control their emotions, their attention, and their frame of reality. This is the triad that governs all influence. And the ones who rise in life, in love, and in leadership are not always the best. They are the ones who control perception. In the coming chapters, you will learn not how to imitate power, but how to become it piece by piece, word by word, until one day people won't remember why they admire you. Only that they always did. Seduction is not a performance, it's a pattern. And those who master it don't do so with charm or compliments, but with silent scarcity and the illusion of unattainability. You were told that to be liked, you must be open, generous, ever present. But the truth is, darker desire is not born from abundance, it's born from tension. People don't obsess over what they fully have. They obsess over what feels almost theirs, but remains just out of reach. That is the space where seduction lives. Niccolo Machiavelli saw it clearly. Men are driven not by the promise of gain, but by the fear of loss. This fear creates pursuit. The moment something seems guaranteed, it loses value. You don't seduce by giving more. You seduce by making your presence feel like a prize. Be selective in your availability. Answer slowly. Don't always be the first to respond. Let them feel the absence of your attention and fill in the blanks with their imagination. Because in the realm of desire, imagination is far more potent than reality. Speak less than people expect. Not to appear mysterious, but to create the space in which their curiosity grows. Let your silence be heavier than their words. Make eye contact, then look away first, not submissively, but strategically, like someone who has somewhere more important to be. Smile, but not often. And when you do, let it feel earned. Your approval must feel like a reward, not a routine. People chase what they have to work for. They chase what doesn't chase them. This is the seduction of the unseen, the unheard, the unresolved. You are not trying to convince them you're desirable. You're letting them discover it themselves in fragments, in gestures, in withheld access. When you offer your attention too freely, when you overshare, over-explain, over-please, you rob others of the hunger that drives connection. You become familiar, and familiar is forgettable. Seduction is not a tool of the weak. It is a weapon of the aware. It's not about manipulation. It's about creating emotional gravity. You don't need to be the most attractive. You need to be the most compelling. You don't need to be loud. You need to be the silence they can't ignore. And once you understand that scarcity breeds obsession, you'll never again feel the need to chase. You'll simply step back and let the world come closer. Confidence is not a gift, it is a script. And those who wait to feel confident before they act never move, because real confidence does not arrive quietly in your chest. It emerges from how others respond to your presence. The world does not reward inner belief, it rewards visible command. That's why the most magnetic people often aren't the smartest or most skilled. They are simply those who know how to perform certainty, even in the face of chaos. Confidence, as Machiavelli would have understood it, is not the truth. It's the performance that makes others rewrite their truth around you. You've been misled to think confidence is something you find. But true confidence is built externally and cemented internally. It begins in your posture before your mind ever catches up. The moment you enter a room, the way you stand, the pace of your steps, the silence you allow before speaking, all of it shapes how people see you and eventually how you see yourself. Fast movement signals anxiety. Slow movement signals control. Speak last, not because you're unsure, but because you want to let the silence stretch. Make them wonder. Confidence is not loud. It's the quiet certainty that your presence means something. Every gesture matters. The way you touch your collar, the way you lift your glass. These are microsignals that broadcast self-possession. Don't explain too much. Don't justify your decisions. When you over-clarify, you are not being transparent. You are unconsciously begging for reassurance. And the moment people sense that, you lose the psychological high ground. A truly confident person speaks like someone who expects agreement. And if disagreement comes, they respond with calm, not defense. Why? Because explanation is often insecurity disguised as logic. Confidence is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to let fear script your behavior. Even if your hands tremble, even if your mind spirals, you anchor yourself in action. You build the behavior first, the emotion catches up later. That's the secret few understand. The confident man is not fearless. He simply chooses a posture that forces his mind to adapt. So if you want to become unshakable, don't ask yourself how to feel better. Ask yourself how to look unbothered. Because the world doesn't wait for you to become confident to treat you with respect. It treats you as you appear. And when you choose to act with silent certainty, the environment bends. People turn, rooms quiet, and suddenly you're not pretending anymore. You are the force they can't ignore. Power doesn't belong to the loudest voice. It belongs to the calmest one in the room. The person who doesn't flinch when provoked, who doesn't rush to defend themselves, who absorbs tension without cracking, that is the person others instinctively respect. Emotional control is not about suppressing feelings. It's about mastering their expression. It is the discipline of choosing when and how to respond, not because you're weak, but because you understand that your reaction is your most visible form of power. Machiavelli understood this well. In The Prince, he didn't advise rulers to be loved, he advised them to be respected and, if necessary, feared. But that fear doesn't come from anger or outbursts. It comes from being unreadable. People fear what they cannot predict. And nothing is more unpredictable than a person who doesn't react the way others expect them to. When someone insults you most, people lash out or shrink away. But when you remain still, when you let the insult hang in the air, look them in the eye and smile faintly, you turn their weapon back on them. You show that they couldn't penetrate your composure. Never show desperation. It signals dependence. Never show jealousy. It reveals insecurity. And never let outrage spill out. It only proves you've lost control of the frame. Your emotions are the levers of power, but only if they're visible, when you choose not when they're triggered from the outside. Remember, the one who reacts first always loses the frame. Train yourself to delay your responses. When you hear something shocking, pause. When you're disrespected, observe. Let time create distance between the stimulus and your reply. This isn't detachment, it's tactical silence. Let the room wonder what you're thinking. Let them project. The longer they wait for your reaction, the more uncertain and submissive they become. You are no longer a citizen in the emotional chaos of others. You are now a fortress, unmoved, unreadable, untouchable. And people will feel it. They will lower their voice around you, measure their words, seek your approval, not because you demanded it, but because they fear what happens when it's withdrawn. Emotional control is the highest currency of power. It builds an aura that no amount of words can replicate. So remember, the loud man is reacting, the calm man is calculating. And when the moment to strike comes, it's the still one who ends the war with a single move because no one saw it coming. There are two types of people in every room. The first talks too much, shares their plans, over-explains their feelings, tries to be liked. That's the fly. Buzzing, exposed, and easy to swat. The second says, little asks, calculated questions, offers nothing without reason, and observes before acting. That's the spider, silent, strategic, and always setting the web. If you want lasting power, you must become the spider. Machiavelli never taught control through brute force. He taught it through invisible threads, psychological traps that others walk into willingly. Power isn't always about commanding people. It's about making them choose you even when they think it's their idea. And that begins by mastering passive control. Instead of chasing attention, you withdraw slightly. You create subtle distance. When they get too close, you lean back. When they open up too quickly, you stay quiet. That space makes them chase, not because you manipulated them, but because you left room for obsession to grow. Give compliments with double meanings. Say just enough to make them wonder, then pivot the topic. Mirror their body language to build trust silently, then shift it first to assert dominance. Ask questions that sound curious but are actually investigative. What drives you most? What do you look for in loyalty? You're not just connecting, you're collecting intel. The spider does not roar. It waits. It lets others reveal themselves. Most people are desperate to be understood. They overshare, hoping to be liked. But the Machiavellian seducer listens more than he speaks, and in doing so, he gains control without exposure. When others speak, they show their wounds, their needs, their leverage points. The more you know, and the less you reveal, the more powerful your positioning becomes. And when someone thinks they're leading, let them. Let them feel in control while they walk deeper into your design. You don't need to pull them into your web. They will wrap themselves in it, thinking it's freedom. And when they finally feel vulnerable, don't attack. Pause, observe, withdraw. Let the discomfort do the work. That's the highest form of seduction, not domination through force, but through emotional geometry. True power is quiet, patient, invisible. The spider builds the web, then disappears. And the fly, believing it's still free, never sees the trap until it's far too late. Power doesn't require you to be extraordinary. It only requires that you appear that way. Most people waste years trying to change who they are internally, never realizing that influence begins from the outside in. Perception is the battlefield, and those who control how they're seen control what's possible around them. Niccolo Machiavelli understood that power is not seized through force, but through presence. The moment you seem rare, people assign you value. The moment you seem calm, people assume you're in control. And the moment you seem above people, begin to follow whether you've earned it or not. Understand this. You don't need to be powerful to trigger respect. You need to look like someone who doesn't need validation. Most of the world is desperate for attention, craving approval, constantly explaining themselves. When you do the opposite still say less. Move with intention, you disturb that pattern. And in a world addicted to noise, your silence becomes louder than words. Here's the Machiavellian truth. If you appear hard to impress others, try to impress you. If you respond slowly, others wait on your reaction. If you make your time feel limited, people value every second of your presence. This isn't manipulation, it's strategic scarcity. You are signaling that you are not available to everyone, not emotionally reactive to everything, not eager to belong. You are the one who sets the pace. You are the one who gets chosen by default, because you made choosing you feel earned. This doesn't require arrogance. It requires design. Speak one sentence less than expected. When you walk into a room, observe before engaging. Let others initiate first and then decide if it's worth your energy. Never explain your boundaries. Let them stand like walls that don't need defending. If someone accuses you of being distant or difficult, don't argue. Let them sit with the discomfort. People assign mystery to what they don't understand, and mystery creates magnetism. In time, people won't know why they're drawn to you. They'll just feel the pull, not because you spoke the most, but because you moved like someone who didn't need the room, and that's exactly what made the room turn. Control perception. And you don't just influence opinions, you bend the entire emotional landscape around you. In this game, reality is what they believe about you, and the one who authors that belief wins. Power fades, charisma wears thin. But myth endures. If you want to become unforgettable, you must become more than a person, you must become a symbol, a reference point that others compare everything else to, even in your absence. The truth is, most people are forgettable not because they lack value, but because they reveal too much, too fast, too easily. The ones who haunt us, the ones we measure others against, are those who left something unsaid, something unresolved. The mystery becomes the magnet. Machiavelli understood the psychology of memory. He knew that people do not remember facts, they remember contrast. If you want to embed yourself in someone's mind, don't try to please them. Don't try to give them closure. Instead, become an emotional disruption. Make them feel something no one else dared to trigger: wonder, approval, fear, rejection, fascination, and then walk away. Not in anger, not in explanation. Just gone. The silence that follows you is louder than any confession, and in that silence you begin to expand in their mind. This is myth-making, when your presence becomes a performance and your absence becomes an event. Never exit cleanly. Never explain your disappearance. When people don't know why you vanished, they start to assign meaning. They wonder if they pushed you away. They question their worth. And suddenly you're no longer a person, they've turned you into a story, a puzzle they keep trying to solve. The seductive power of myth is that it's built not by you, but through them. You drop hints, not answers. You let others overhear praise, but you never repeat it. You allow rumors, but you never correct them. Why? Because what others imagine about you is more powerful than anything you could say yourself. When people fill in the blanks, they overestimate you. And once someone believes you're beyond reach, they'll chase you longer than they ever chased someone they fully understood. Don't try to be relatable. Be unforgettable. Don't clarify, suggest. Don't explain, imply. When you become the person, they compare everyone else to, they can't replace you, because they're no longer searching for a new person. They're searching for the feeling you left behind. That's not personality. That's legacy. That's myth. And that's how power becomes permanent even when you've left the room. Words are overrated. In a world obsessed with explaining, justifying, and performing, the rarest and most potent weapon you can wield is silence, intentional, strategic, weaponized silence. Not the silence of weakness, but the silence of power. The kind of silence that bends the emotional tone of the room without lifting a finger. This is the art of using negative space, the pauses, the absences, the omissions to do what entire speeches often fail to accomplish. And Machiavelli, with his ruthless clarity, would have told you he who speaks least controls the most. Negative space forces others to react. It creates pressure. When you wait 2 seconds longer than expected before responding, the other person begins to question themselves. When you remain calm after an accusation, the accuser scrambles to fill the void with doubt, then apology. Why? Because silence breaks social rhythm. Most people are uncomfortable with blank space, they rush to fill it. But if you can become comfortable in that discomfort, you hold the upper hand. And suddenly people aren't hearing your words, they're feeling your presence. But silence is only half the battle. The real domination happens through framing. Every conversation operates within an unspoken context, the frame. And the one who defines that frame controls how every word is interpreted. It's not about facts, it's about how those facts are perceived. Most people argue inside someone else's frame. Machiavellians destroy that frame, or better yet, replace it. If someone calls you arrogant, don't deny it. Reframe it. Confidence looks like arrogance to the insecure. If someone talks over you, don't get louder. Go silent, then calmly ask, "Are you done?" You don't defend your position. You redefine the entire lens through which the conversation occurs. That's not argument. That's psychological authorship. Even in casual moments, frame control matters. If someone gossips to you, ask, "Why are you so comfortable telling me this?" That subtle challenge repositions you as the standard of judgment, not their equal. It makes people second-guess their openness and elevates your perceived dominance. The more you speak, the more others analyze you. The less you speak, the more they project onto you. And people fear what they can't fully read. Use that. Let the silences speak louder than your sentences. Let your stillness be louder than their noise. Because when you master the negative space and frame the world on your terms, you don't need to prove anything. They'll do the work for you, trying to decode, you justify, you follow you. And that is real control. There is a type of presence that shifts the temperature of a room without saying a word. A presence so still, so composed, it causes others to hesitate, to second-guess, to shrink without understanding why. This is not charisma. It's not charm. It is what Machiavelli would recognize as fortress energy, the silent force field of someone who cannot be read, cannot be rattled, and cannot be reached unless they allow it. And in a world of hyper-accessibility, emotional oversharing, and desperate self-disclosure, this energy is not just rare, it's nearly extinct. To build a fortress is to become immune to emotional penetration. You don't show all your walls, you simply never reveal the gates. While others speak to be understood, you observe to understand. While they panic under pressure, you pause. While they look for validation, you build your own internal echo chamber. The person who speaks less but watches everything becomes the one everyone unconsciously adjusts themselves around. They don't know why, but in your stillness, they sense danger. True fortress energy begins with solitude, not as isolation, but as independence. If you need others to feel complete, you are not dangerous, you are dependent. Power starts with the ability to be alone and still feel whole. And from that wholeness, you begin to construct something deeper, emotional composure. Every time you delay your reaction, every time you choose silence over impulse, every time you feel a trigger but don't show it, you are laying another stone in your inner citadel. But the fortress is not just built in action, it is carved in perception. You don't overshare, you don't rush to clarify, you let others wonder. The moment they believe they know you, you shift. The moment they think they've mapped your patterns, you go silent. And in that unpredictability, they lose their sense of control. Train your micro-reactions. When someone challenges you, pause long enough to make them question if they went too far. When someone tries to impress you, don't validate them too quickly. Let them sit in the silence. It's not cruelty, it's calibration. You are showing them that your attention is not a given, but a gravity they must earn. Fortress energy doesn't shout. It doesn't react. It doesn't beg to be understood. It simply is. And once you radiate it, people behave differently around you, not because you demanded respect, but because your silence commanded it. When they can't predict your next move, they assume you have none. When they can't read your emotions, they assume you're above theirs. And when they realize you're not just another player, but the one designing the board, they stop playing against you and start playing around you. At the final stage of power, you no longer strive to impress, seduce, or dominate. You transcend tactics. You become something rarer, an archetype. Not just a person, but a symbol. Not someone with confidence, but the very embodiment of it. Not someone who seems powerful, but someone who is power personified. This is the territory Machiavelli truly aimed for, not temporary control, but permanent psychological influence. Because real dominance doesn't end when you leave the room. It lingers. It echoes. It lives inside the minds of others, long after your presence is gone. Most people are easily replaced because they try to be liked in the moment. They offer themselves fully hoping to be chosen. But the ones who are remembered, who haunt hearts, who shape behavior, who define emotional standards, they never gave themselves away. They allowed themselves to become a mirror reflecting the most intense emotions others had ever felt. Approval, fear, longing, admiration, awe. And then they vanished. That contrast, the sudden disappearance of something unforgettable, is what makes people search for you in everyone else, and always come up short. To reach this level, you must stop seeking connection through relatability. You must become someone that no one can fully decode. Speak less, reveal less. But when you do show up, make the moment seismic. Be the one who says what others wouldn't dare, who holds silence when others panic, who enters a space not with excitement but with stillness that makes people pause. You must choose your appearances like a monarch chooses battles, rare, deliberate, and devastatingly effective. When you exit someone's life, do so without a closing statement. No dramatic explanation, no emotional wrap-up. Leave space, leave silence. Because people don't obsess over closure, they obsess over what they could have had, and the story they write in their minds about you. That story is stronger than anything you could have said. This is how legends are made. Not by constant presence, but by controlled scarcity and emotional contrast. You don't just become someone they desire, you become the person they hold everyone else against. Their internal standard, their secret benchmark. You become the king they compare all leaders to, the lover no one else matches, the enemy who still commands their respect. You don't just walk away, you leave a vacuum. And once someone sees you as the standard, everyone else feels like a downgrade. That's not coincidence. That's design. And that is immortality. In a world where everyone is trying to be seen, the real power belongs to those who remain unpredictable. The most seductive people aren't always the loudest or the most attractive. They're the ones who know how to control perception, how to stay calm when others unravel, and how to withhold just enough to create mystery. What you give too easily loses value, but what you protect, your energy, your time, your silence, becomes sacred. The truth is, confidence isn't something you wait for. It's something you perform until it becomes your reality. Power doesn't come from dominating others. It comes from mastering your reactions, defining your emotional space, and letting others adjust to you. In personal relationships, business, or even daily interactions, you don't need to prove yourself. You need to own your presence. That means speaking less, moving with intention, and walking away when necessary, not for drama, but to reinforce your value. And here's the lesson Machiavelli would whisper if he were alive today. You don't need to be feared or even loved. You need to be respected. When you master how people feel in your presence, you won't have to chase influence. It will orbit around you. So if you're tired of being overlooked, underestimated, or replaceable, start by becoming the standard not the seeker. If this message hit something deep inside, you don't keep it to yourself. Like, share and hit that subscribe button, because we're just getting started on the psychology of becoming unforgettable. Your power isn't out there. It's in how you carry yourself from this moment forward.